Consumers' insatiable demand for Scottish salmon risks potentially irreversible damage to the wider natural environment. Well, that is what a committee of Scottish MSPs is saying. They're worried that sea lice, which can attach themselves to farmed salmon, is spreading to their wild neighbours. Well, this is all part of a report on the salmon industry in Scotland due out next month. We first covered this story back in 2014, and we heard then from Ray Dingwall. He's a gillie in Western Ross in the Scottish Highlands.
They don't seem to get the time to feed and try and get some weight on, because they generally are coming back to freshwater far too quickly. Why are they coming back to freshwater? Because they've been heavily infested with sea lice. The small sea trout that we've been releasing for the past 10 years have not in any way grown in any size. And in my opinion, what's happening when the juvenile salmon and sea trout are on their migratory paths, they're basically being eaten alive by extremely high numbers of sea lice. If you think about how many salmon are on a salmon farm, many thousands of fish there, the potential for these salmon farms to create a massive reservoir of larvae, which then emanates from open cages out into the surrounding environment. Some people describe it as a sea lice soup that your juvenile sea trout and salmon have got to swim through. It's a death sentence.
And since then, the problem has apparently got worse. That's according to Don Staniford. He's director of Scottish Salmon Watch. His organisation campaigns against salmon farms.
The problems with Scottish salmon farms are at the height. It's the worst lice problems, the worst disease problems, the worst problems with mass mortalities. By farming salmon at such high stocking densities, this is factory fish farming, we're exacerbating the lice problem, the problem with parasites, which are spreading amongst the farm salmon and also impacting on migrating wild fish such as sea trout and wild Atlantic salmon. So salmon farms, they're acting as reservoirs and incubators for parasites like sea lice, but also other infectious diseases which are deadly not just to farm salmon, but can have impacts on Scotland's wild marine ecosystem. Scottish salmon is not a high-end luxury. It's not this wild salmon product that leaps up waterfalls. The state of health on a salmon farm is well removed from wild Atlantic salmon. This is a factory battery product.
That was Don Staniford. Well, Julie Hesketh-Laird is Chief Executive of the Scottish Salmon Producers Organisation. They speak for Scottish salmon farming industry. Julie, we've just heard claims that diseases amongst farmed salmon is the worst it's ever been, and little's been done to tackle it. What do you say to that?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on. I listened to Don Staniford with interest, and I really don't recognise his figures. Sea lice levels for December are at the lowest that they've been for the same period for many years. My organisation's been publishing sea lice levels since 2013 on an area basis, and the December figures show that actually things are moving in the right direction.
But this has been a problem since 2002, hasn't it, when they started to raise these issues?
Well, the industry has made enormous progress since 2002. It's an industry that is listening to its critics. We have engaged with the wild salmon fisheries, and we really are trying to listen and understand where the issues lie.
Can I ask you what you have done?
Well, the industry has put an awful lot of effort into a range of techniques to manage sea lice. The best technique to manage sea lice is an entirely natural one. Companies are working to use cleaner fish in the environment. So these are small fish that will live alongside farmed salmon, species like wrasse and lumpfish, which are slightly prettier than they sound. Now they're put in the salmon farms alongside the farmed salmon, and they nibble off the lice in the environment, so they thrive, and the salmon will thrive as well, and it's an entirely natural solution.
So really they're predators to get rid of the parasites. That's how that works. But surely, right, if you farm less intensively, you'll lose money, won't you? And that's the problem, really.
Well, I wouldn't say that farming is particularly intensive, and I think the picture that Mr. Staniford wants to create isn't the picture that I've seen. I'm new into this industry. I've been out onto a large number of salmon farms, or large and so many as you can in a few weeks in the job, but the farms that I've seen are pretty ordinary salmon farms. They're not intensively farmed. Salmon have plenty of space to roam around. Many of those that I've seen are RSPCA accredited. Companies want to ensure that fish husbandry is absolutely to the best standard that they could possibly be.
But you'll accept this is absolutely contradictory to what Don Staniford and others have said. And one of the other things they say is, this is sold as a luxury item, but aren't we in fact being sold battery fish, basically?
Well, farmers want to meet a range of assurance schemes to demonstrate that husbandry standards are really high. In the UK, each individual retailer that companies sell into will have their own detailed specifications setting out their expectations of farm conditions. And, there'll be a range of voluntary assurance schemes as well, like RSPA Assured. And, the French, who prize culinary excellence, granted Scottish salmon their top accolade 26 years ago.
Are you saying there's no problem?
I'm saying that the industry has an issue with sea lice that it is working really hard and is beginning to get on top of. The progress that's been made since 2002 has been enormous. The research spend in the industry that totals around £60 million a year is really going a long way to address the concerns that Mr. Staniford has.
Okay, let's stop you there. Julie Hesketh-Laird, thank you for joining us on the programme.